Hello Trailblazers, Ian here, and today I bring you a basic and quick guide on how to play with our first imaginary destruction unit, Imbiber Lunae, or mostly known as Tanheng. If you are up to the story, you already have a little taste on his kit, and already experienced his new mechanic of skill points manipulation. Then you know that this guy is going to be a really good and powerful unit. For this video, we will prioritize his kit, Eidolons, Relics, LightCones, and his team compositions. But without further ado, let's begin. I'll have a completely new mechanic on how you can spend your skill points and basic attack, but let's begin with his skill. It basically changes your basic attack depending on how many skill points you consume, increasing his power up to 3 times. When you consume 2 or 3 SP, it will generate a stack of Domaining Roar that will increase IL's critical damage by 6%. Those stacks will start counting from the 4th hit. So if you use your charge normal attack to the full potential, you will receive 4 stacks, which is equivalent to 24 extra crit damage. And that's an amazing reward just to play him efficiently. For his talent, every time IL attacks, he will receive the Righteous Heart buff, which increases their critical damage by 5% per hit. This can stack up to a maximum of 6 times with a fully charged attack. And now the start of all his kit. His normal attack has 4 different types of attack. The basic one, that I don't suggest you to use, uses 0 skill points and unleash a 2-hit attack that deals some attack percent as an imaginary damage. If you consume 1 skill, it will deal 3 hits and again imaginary damage. The normal attack starts to operate when you consume 2 skills. It will deal 5 hits and 2 extra hits to adjacent targets, which is like 3 normal attacks to other enemies. And lastly, if he consumes 3 skills, it will deal 7 hits and 4 extra hits to adjacent targets. This is what you should be aiming every time your turn comes up. It is recommended that IL only focus on enemies that have imaginary weakness, due to his bonus ability, Jolt Anu, which increases your crit rate by 24% against them. This is why Silver Wolf and characters that can debuff enemies are excellent for him. But more information on the team comp section. His other bonus abilities are Star Veil, which gives you 15 energy at the start of the battle, and Aqua Ring, which increases your resistance on crowd control debuffs. For his ultimate, he will launch an attack equivalent to a percentage of his attack stats, also affecting adjacent targets. And the important thing is that he will gain 2 Squama Sacrosanta. You can hand up to 3 of them, and basically they are like replacements for your skill points, so you better ult whenever you can. And last but not least, his technique. When using it, IL enters in a leaping dragon state for 20 seconds. While in this state, using his attack will make a dash forward with a great speed, attacking all the enemies it reaches and blocking all the attacks that are thrown at it. Once hit, the enemy will receive a basic attack equal to a percentage of IL's attack and will start with 1 charge of Squama Sacrosanta. So if you can do it, it's like an extra skill point for our boy at the beginning of the battle. For the trace priorities, you need to focus first on your normal attack, follow up to his skill to complement your normal attacks, burst, and at the end your talent. For your bonus abilities, Jolt Anu is the first you need to unlock, then Star Veil, and you can unlock Aqua Ring for more resistance to debuffs. And now let's go to his Eidolons. Imbiber Lunae is already a good unit at E0, so please do not feel pressure to pull for his Eidolons. But if you are really wanting to pull, then let's check them. His E1 gives you more Righteous Heart, which means more crit damage per hit. It just makes it more consistent and viable to use. And now, his E2. It's something else. After using his burst, IL actions is advanced forward by 100% and gains 1 extra Squama, basically changing his whole playstyle and completing all his kit to the fullest. Because now you can ignore all your speed stats. For example, it's going to be your turn and you use your skill to make huge damage. Then use your ult and it's going to be your turn again, using the extra Squama to delete every enemy. Still, I don't suggest you to pull for his Eidolons, but if you have the Stellar Jades, then his E2 it's a good stopping point. His E3 and E5 increases skill and basic attacks, ultimate and talent levels. His E4 basically makes your Dominating Roar buff persist until the end of this character next turn. And finally, his E6, increasing the imaginary resistant penetration of Dan Heng next basic attack to 20% every time one of your allies use their ult. So it's really good if you want to melt imaginary shields. Now let's take a quick look at Dan Heng relic, stats and set builds. And after playing it and tested him, I think that I need to be honest, he's really easy to build. For his chest piece, crit rate and crit damage would be the best option until you can reach a maximum of 70%. For the boost section, speed or attack are excellent choices. If you want to have more turns, speed is the way to go. But, like I said, if you have his E2, then I really recommend you to go for attack. And remember, you can also use characters that can solve his speed problems, making you focus more on his damage and less on his efficiency in combat. For ornaments, imaginary damage boost is a no-brainer for any elemental DPS. And for his string, you can either use ER or attack depending on what you need the most. For his substats, you are mainly looking for crit damage, crit rate, speed, and attack. And if you are going to focus fully on attacking targets with imaginary weaknesses, then breaking effect is what you need. For the relics, Musketeer set piece will buff your Dan Heng normal attack and his attack stats, covering all his overall damage. This set piece just makes IL really easy to build because, let's be honest, all of us have like thousands of these relics to spare. Another good set is the Wastelander of Banditry Desert, buffing his imaginary damage and synergizing perfectly with his bonus passive, giving you more crit rate, and if you imprison enemies, it will give you 20 extra crit damage, making you consider using a mono imaginary team, so you can actually use 2-piece Musketeer and 2-piece Wastelander for a more dynamic build. Moving on, his LightCones recommendation. Surprising to no one, his signature LightCone, which has a really interesting art style, helps you meet his recommended stats, buffing your crit rate and using your normal attack to buff your attack stats and energy. Now I'm going to say this right now because I think you can see the maximum potential now. His E2 plus his LightCone, it's a really broken thing. But thankfully there are still some great alternatives. For example, on the Fall of the Ion, boost your attack every time you use a normal attack or burst, and it also buffs you with more damage every time you broke an enemy shield. Under the Blue Sky can be a good 4-star alternative if you are using all your 3 skill points attack, since it can hit adjacent targets, giving you attack, and if you defeat an enemy, it will give you more crit rate. The Molds welcome you. It's a 4-star LightCone that will grant you stacks by using basic attacks, skill, and ultimate abilities to increase your attack. And lastly, Collapsing Sky, it can give you an increase of your attack without doing absolutely nothing. Not his best LightCone, but of course, it's a good 3-star you can use. So now that you have a pretty good understanding on how he works and how to best build him, let's go to his team compositions. In Vibraal Lune, it's a character that exponentially improves depending on the supports you have. One of his greatest advantages is that he accepts all kinds of buffs, whether it be crit damage, attack, crit rate, speed, and energy. This makes him very open to any composition you can give him. The only small detail is that you need to organize yourself when fighting. Due to his high skill point consumption, you need to take this in mind when you want to use the skills of your supports and healers. This is the composition that I suggest when building Dan Heng. You can use 2 characters of Harmony and Nihility. Basically, we need characters that can provide buffs and debuffs. And at the end, you can use either Abundance character or Preservation character. A good example of an excellent team for Dan Heng can be Tingyun, Silverwolf, and Lasha. But in a more realistic terms, Tingyun, Pele, Natasha can be a great alternative. And finally, these are the team suggestions that I recommend. With all of them, you can use the build and stats that I already suggested. Anyway, that covers my 1.3 guide for Vibraal Lune in Honkai Star Rail. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new about IL, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Also, I tried to do a more focused and simple guide for you. If you want a more detailed guide like the one I did for Blade, please let me know. And thank you for watching. I hope to see you in another one. Peace!